Hi, my name is Bethany, and today I want to talk to you about my thoughts on the show As We See It, which somewhat recently premiered on Amazon Prime. So if you're not aware, I am an autistic adult and thus am wanting to share my thoughts and viewpoints on the show as an autistic person myself. So the show As We See It basically follows three autistic adults who live together in an apartment, and they have an assistant aid person that helps them with their life. And basically the idea is for them to become as independent as they can. And the show just kind of follows them through their journey there. This apparently has been adapted from an Israeli show about autism, and I guess it has a similar storyline, but they kind of adapted it. One place I read in passing said that this As We See It is maybe more a lighthearted take. One of the things that I do think is pretty cool about the show is just how many autistic people are cast members. All of the three leading roles that are autistic people as characters are played by autistic actors or actresses. And there's another autistic actor who plays the boss of one of the characters at one point. There's a party that happens at another point where there's a lot of people who are playing autistic characters who are also autistic. So I think that's really cool that there was a lot of inclusion there. As for the show itself and the storyline, I think it was alright. Honestly, I don't feel like it was bad. I don't think it was bad at all. But I also don't really feel like it wasn't one of those shows where I was like, wow, I really want to see the next episode. I could easily, for almost all of the episodes, leave it on one episode at a time and not really have a problem, which really, to me, kind of puts the storyline as kind of mediocre. I do think that there is an interesting mix of the autistic experience trying to be portrayed here, which I feel maybe wasn't as authentic as the kind of expression we would see in Everything's Gonna Be Okay. I usually say that title wrong, but I have a video with my thoughts on the first season of that one, where they do have autistic actors, but there is a lot of moments where you just see people authentically like stimming, authentically being autistic, which is really nice. Where this show, there are definitely things where they're portrayed as autistic, but feel a little bit like maybe toned down. I don't know how to say that any better than that. Now, I know there was a lot of people who were upset with the show for some reasons. One of them, from what I understand, is like they checked with Autism Speaks as well as other organizations, I think. But at least that Autism Speaks was checked with, and they're like, how dare you check with them, blah, blah, blah. Honestly, when you're making a show on autism and it involves stuff like that, it's pretty reasonable for them to check with organizations that have big names in that same sphere. I don't think that has a whole lot to do with it, to be completely honest. It's not like they were showing like restraints, especially not like the way like Sia's movie where they were like positively showing face down prone restraints and stuff like that. It's not like that. These autistic people definitely kind of lie in limbo, if that makes sense. So like not your super high functioning, low level, low support needs individuals, but also not non-speakers who need someone with them 24/7. So I would say possibly that they would land around level 2 in support needs, because they do live in community housing technically, even though it's arranged, I guess, by their parents in the story. But they do have an aide who works with them quite often. They rely on other people a lot to help them with their work and with other things like that. So I think that's kind of where that lies. I think that is nice because there's really not a lot of representation there. A lot of times it's either like level 3 support needs or level 1 support needs, and a lot of times level 2 gets kind of lost in there. I think they do kind of touch upon the attitude of some people who have Asperger's, traditionally called Asperger's, versus autism, and that kind of attitude of like, oh no, I'm normal. Like, I can handle myself. I'm not like them. So there was a character that kind of had that feeling about them. And there were moments that would touch on things that are really true to life and unfortunate, where people will either mislead or take advantage of people or assume terrible things about people just because of their demographic, not because of what they're actually doing. And just kind of some of that, but it doesn't get like too deep, if that makes sense. It doesn't get like super traumatic, awful. It does tend to stay more on the upbeat side. It does somewhat try to get into, once again, the whole like there's a character who really is focused on wanting to be with someone and the act of intimacy. And I don't know what it is with these shows being like super obsessed with being like, ha, look, autistic people and disabled people also like to do this, but they're gonna say it out loud in awkward moments. Like, I don't know. It feels weird when people like try to make a character all about that. That's just me. But yes, obviously we're human beings, so it is what it is. But I think it was interesting because while there was this kind of leaning toward the caretaker, caregiver kind of perspective, it wasn't necessarily like always the caregiver, caretaker, family member, whoever is right, which is the tendency of a lot of shows to take that direction. Like, oh no, the poor caretaker has to handle all the autistic people. But it also did kind of try to show their side in somewhat of a balance, if that makes sense. So like, you get to see maybe the types of things the caretaker or family member, guardian, etc. will be handling with someone who doesn't always understand the implications of certain actions, for example. But also them trying to figure out, how do you handle someone who is a person? They're adults. And just because they have delays in certain areas or don't understand all the social things or have issues with navigating relationships, etc., does that mean you can take away things from them, take away essentially their autonomy because of that? And really kind of that conversation kind of went on there. So I did think that was interesting. I don't think that a lot of autistic people will be like super, super happy with it. But those of you who are finding yourselves commonly left out of like all of the autism shows and movies and stuff like that, this might be something that represents you a bit more. But beyond that, honestly, normally when I watch these shows or these movies, I see myself in some way. And I'm talking about seeing myself in non-speakers and high-level support needs characters, and seeing myself in like low support level support needs characters as well. I tend to see something of myself. And so perhaps I am dealing with that bias, but I really didn't feel a super big connection to any of the characters. Like, I'd be like, ha, yeah, I've seen that happen, or like, yeah, that sounds about right, or, oh, you know, like, those moments where you're like, yeah, nah, that falls under a characterization, but I just didn't really feel connected, and I don't know if that's because I didn't feel represented, or if, like, the characters just didn't feel like dynamic enough for me to feel a lot of connection with them as characters, if that makes sense. I don't know how to explain, other than like there's a lot of things that feel slightly muted. I really don't know how to say that in any other way. And I don't know if that was because they were trying to be respectful and not like take things too like, again, heavy or dark, or try to avoid like stigmatizing maybe. I don't know, but there's just something about it that feels like it's muted. I really don't know how to explain it better than that. Of course, we have like the side kind of story with like the caretaker and some of the family members, and even like, for example, for one of them, I did appreciate, like, you see the parents and the way they feel guilty about something, but then you also see the autistic person, how they feel abandoned all the time by everyone who's ever been around them. And I can relate to that. I can absolutely relate to that. But it's like, I didn't often feel that with the character. Again, don't know, maybe that's just me. I honestly liked the first episode with the guy who goes to work because he was slightly rocking and he did some echolalia. And I feel like those were the most authentic moments that I really felt like, yeah, I see you. That's me. And then after that, I feel like they took away, like, I don't know. It's almost like they kind of filtered out what felt like authentic movements, authentic reactions for a lot of it. I mean, it's all right. It's not bad. I don't think it's like awful and stigmatizing. I don't think it's like poor me, poor this person, poor that person. I think some people might be bothered by a lot of the characters really caring about being normal, or this idea of normal. One of the characters didn't realize other people could tell that they were autistic, for example. Just things like that. But I don't feel like the message of the show was necessarily that they should feel that way or that they should want to feel that way. I feel like even towards the end, they kind of drove home a little bit of like, okay, but what's normal anyway? Or what's the point in being normal anyway? That kind of thought. So if you are autistic and you really like clicked with these characters, or just what your perspective of this show was in general, I'm really interested to hear from you. And yeah, just let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in autism related content from me, I do try to upload every Thursday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, so you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Thank you to everyone who supports me here on YouTube as YouTube channel members, through Ko-fi, and as patrons on Patreon. And a special thank you to my Spinny Stimmy tier patrons, Jack Varney and Philip Noah. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having a wonderful week, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!